now sold hundreds of millions of dollars of product, which is insane.
But back then, had we made that different decision, I don't think we would be here.
Red light's becoming super hot right now. You probably receive a lot of backlash. How do you prove to people this actually does work?
There's a lot of fake before and afters out there. We had to turn down a mid 5-figure purchase order. Listen, focus on having control of the business early on.
As my hair just fell out.
Need some iRESTORE.
Money talks, let's keep it real.
Kevin, welcome to Money Talks. Kevin Chen, CEO and founder of iRESTORE Laser. Why don't we just start with what you do and what's iRESTORE?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Kevin. I'm the co-founder and CEO of iRESTORE. We are a red light therapy company. We use medical devices to help restore hair as well as your skin. So our flagship is a helmet that you wear on your head with lasers and LEDs that bring back lost hair as well as thicken the existing hair. And then the second product that we have that we just launched 6 months ago was the Illumina face mask, which is a red light therapy mask. It's all the rage these days. With
What you got right there.
Which I have right here.
You can show it. Love the color.
It's the first truly translucent mask on the market, which is incredibly difficult to engineer. And you can kind of see how it works.
Cool.
It's pretty darn bright.
Before we get into the details of all that, so you founded this company about 10 years ago. You've now sold hundreds of millions of dollars of product, which is insane. But I want to kind of take it back to the beginning. How do you come up with a product like this or a company or an idea? Like most people, when they want to start a business, it's like making t-shirts or making a food product, doing something very simple that most people can do. I don't know anyone else who's created a product like a laser helmet. So how do you even do that?
The real answer is there's a lot of luck involved. Well, perhaps it's helpful to go through how we got into the space in the first place. Funny enough, the company, so our company started off actually as a completely different business. It's called Freedom Laser Therapy, and what it was a laser therapy clinic to help people quit smoking in a clinic setting. Very, very different from what it is today. And the idea really quickly was you came into a clinic, got a treatment for acupressure points, and usually a pretty therapist would treat you, and then they would help you get over the nicotine addiction by alleviating that physical urge. And the laser therapy was basically a one-time treatment, and once you're done with that, you overcome the physical urges, and the rest is mental. And that was the idea. Now, what does that have to do with what we do today? Not a lot, except that when we got in that business, we learned a lot. We failed, unfortunately, but it was a really good learning experience of understanding why a business succeeded versus failed. And the reasons that it didn't work out were that it was a one-time purchase. It was a game designed to fail, which meant if you succeeded in helping someone quit smoking, you failed because they left you. And if you didn't, they don't like you because you didn't help them. So it was a game designed to fail. But we learned the hard way. It wasn't obvious at the time. So we took that lesson and we said, well, what is the opposite of that? What is a product where you can actually design a game to win? And so when we had the business through one thing or another, we learned about laser therapy for hair loss, as my dad was actually thinning and balding at the time pretty hard. And so it's coming for me. But through that, we learned about laser therapy in a clinic setting where you have to go in and sit under a big laser 30 minutes, 3 times a week, and you can get your hair back. But the problem with that is it's a very cumbersome process. You have to go in all the time. And frankly, it was not a good experience, and you couldn't keep up. And there's one thing about hair loss is that you have to keep doing it or you're going to lose the progress. So that was an insight for us that we took, and we said, well, can we do this for the home, right? Can we make this easier and do it for home use? And we kind of looked into the market, and there wasn't a ton available online at the time. This was about 10 years ago. And so we decided, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we pivot the company to do this? Because frankly, the quit smoking business was not working out at all. It was failing. So it was kind of our last ditch effort. And so we pivoted the company and spent about 2 years to develop the iRESTORE hair growth system.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And how did you go about what's the step if someone has an idea? Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I want to make a helmet that has
Yeah.
lasers in it that
Yeah,
helps
yeah.
regrow hair. Like, do you just like start looking for factories? Do you like try and figure out the engineering? Do you hire someone? Like, what's that first step?
Well, I think the first step is validating the concept. And you could do that in a couple different ways. I think the easiest thing to do nowadays is just to sell first before you have the product. So you can create a landing page. You can generate ads these days pretty easily with GPT and just test a concept. Spend a couple $1,000s and test a concept out to see if that works. That's if you're starting out and you don't have an audience, right? And if you do have an existing customer base or audience, the method I would take differently. So, and I can go into like how we came up with this too, if that's interesting.
Yeah.
In terms of how
I
we
think
developed.
kind of the short story of that would be really interesting.
Exactly. So with the helmet, we weren't as smart about the process. We kind of honestly got lucky a little bit. We thought it would work. Checked it on Amazon and it took off. But with this, we were much more methodical with the face mask. So what we did was we really leveraged our customer base as a resource. So one of the things is we really survey customers a lot, and we've built that as a process every month to send email, SMS surveys to customers. So past buyers within the last 12 months, usually recent buyer, and then we then got on Zoom interviews and interviewed a lot of customers, and that was a great way of sourcing information, understand pain points, right? So really, what you're looking for is not a product idea, but a pain point. So what do they need, and also how do they perceive our brand, right? Because if we go sell, I don't know, furniture or something, nobody would care, right? It's obvious. But what is from furniture to like the closest product that they think we should make? Like, what is that gap? And by surveying customers, we really got great insight and had a lot of conviction in this product. So one of the most telling things, which I thought was crazy, was when we did a survey. And the key here is you're surveying for concerns. So like, what are the concerns you have? Usually you want some kind of magnitude, so like rank 1 through 10 type of thing. So you can pick the highest magnitude. And then you want to leave an open form for them to fill out any concern that they have. So what other products would you like to see? What other concerns do you have that you want to address, that you want iRESTORE to address for you? And what was crazy was that in one of those open field responses, about a quarter of people put LED face mask. So that was just so conclusive. It was not a multiple choice. It was an open
That's
form,
crazy.
and someone put it in. And then we revalidated, same thing, next survey. So that just gave us so much conviction in producing this. And with this type of product that's complicated, that requires engineering, R&D, mold, you need high conviction, right? Because it's a big investment upfront. And so that was kind of the main thing that we did, is just talking to customers for this product. I would take a different approach, though, if I didn't have an audience or customer base to go to. Now, if I was starting off, I would still do a similar approach of doing the digital testing, but you can also find similar customer bases nowadays. You can do that on Reddit. If you can find communities on Reddit, you can find people to talk to. Facebook groups is a great place to find people to talk to as well, especially people that are engaging all the time.
Like
Those
for
are
niche things.
niche.
So for example, like there's hair loss communities
Exactly.
where people are just discussing like how to, regrow hair and the best things they've tried. And you can
Yeah.
kind of go and be like, oh, they don't have good solutions in this community. It's a pretty
Yeah.
big size.
Yeah, or go into competitors' Facebook groups or communities, right? And it depends, right? Are you making a product that's a Me Too or relatively similar to something that exists, or are you doing like a crazy net new innovation? Because those two things would be different, right? It's like the Steve Jobs dreaming of the iPhone. Like, there's no research for that. That's just understanding the market and talking to customers and really predicting the future. But I think in that, most 90% products probably fall in the first category, which is like same thing but a little bit better, or same thing that
Yeah.
looks a little better. I think you can find the groups for that.
To talk about the products a little bit, this is like a super kind of I don't know, like a hard industry in the sense that like you probably receive a lot of backlash and like a lot of people, like a lot of people just think like any hair regrowth things, for example, is just like nonsense and it doesn't work. And
Right.
how do you, like, first of all, how do you kind of figure out that it works? And like what's the science behind that? And then like how do you prove to people that like, oh wait, this actually does work? And yeah, how much does it work? Like for with the hair regrowth, for example.
Yeah, so definitely this is a high skepticism category where it's kind of like weight loss, right? People are just inherently skeptical and think it's snake oil.
Yeah.
So the framework that I like to use personally is, and actually this is what I tell my teams, A, B, C, D. So A is authentic reviews, B is before and afters, C is clinical studies, and D is doctors or dermatologists. And that's how you build trust in this industry. So ABCD, are you tracking ABCD in everything that you do to the customer, in your product, how you develop everything, right? And it also helps a lot that we are FDA-cleared. So these are FDA-regulated devices under Class 2. So there's that inherent trust both in safety and efficacy. But the other thing that we've done is we've done 2 and now a third ongoing clinical study on our products to validate that it's worked. And even our base model, we got 43% average improvement in hair thickness and count in 4 months. So we can definitively say that it works. And that's double-blind studies.
So basically like a test group and then...
Yeah, so how it works is you have a placebo group. So about 40 people, 20 got the placebo device, 20 got the real device. And we didn't know who was who, and it was a dermatologist that did the study. And then we measured at the end of the day. And then the placebo got a very small improvement, and then the actual iRESTORE participants got 43% improvement. So we were able to see that data and really prove
and that's
that it works.
43% thicker hair.
And hair count. So what they're doing is they tattoo a little spot on your head, and then they measure that over time on their, like a trichoscope, but like a...
Oh, wow.
And then you look at it and you say, is the hair thickness improving over that 4-month period? Or do you have more hairs per square centimeter? And
Wow.
then you count it. Yeah.
Why did the placebo ones get any improvement?
Well, you still grow hair even if you don't use red light therapy, right?
Like just because you just in general you grow hair.
Right. I mean, you're growing hair right now.
Yeah.
Right. It's a natural process of being a human. So there's still some hair growth, but the question is like, how much improvement can you see?
Okay.
And typically with people that are thinning, the hair is thinning over time, and every hair growth cycle, it's thinning and it's shedding, right? But in a 4-month study, you're probably not going through like a full cycle for your hair. So that's how we're able to prove that it works.
Interesting. And then I know the masks and like red lights becoming super hot right now. Like, what is the benefit on the skin?
With the red light therapy mask, and actually it's red and infrared. So red, infrared, and we have blue as well. So what it does is really a lot of things, almost too good to be true. But what it does is it improves blood circulation. It reduces inflammation, and it's stimulating your collagen production as well as elastin production, which, of course, one of the big reasons we age is, our skin is losing elasticity. It's losing collagen as we age, especially in the latter years, and it's getting sun damage, right, when we're exposed to UV. So the red light therapy and the infrared really reverses a lot of that process and can help minimize sun damage or DNA damage from UV. And the net result is, frankly, just smoother skin. It's more even skin tone. For those with acne, blue light helps a lot with acne as well. It kills the bacteria. And we have that as well in the mask. So it's just an overall
setting.
Yeah, different settings. Cool. You can do it all at once, actually. One of the few masks where you can do that.
Cool. And you said you've been using it and you've been getting compliments?
I have been, yeah, I have been. So I do know it works. Let's just say that.
You do look very young.
Thank you, yeah. 34 years young.
There you go.
Yeah.
You told me an interesting thing before. You said that people always say Asian people look really young, but there's actually a scientific reason behind it.
Yeah, Asians don't raisin. Yeah. There is.
I never knew. So.
Yeah, so I've always looked really young. And I'd always wondered, people always say, oh, Asians look young. It's natural. And I was like, well, it's got to be a reason. So I went to Wikipedia and I started reading about it. And it turns out that Asians look young for a couple of reasons. One is we're actually genetically gifted. We have more collagen production than, say your average Caucasian person. And so naturally we'll have thicker skin and doesn't age as much, right? The second thing is behavioral. I don't know, my mom, for example, if she goes out in the sun, she'll wear long sleeves, even if it's a hot day, and she'll, sometimes you see the women with the umbrella. So behavioral, especially in like Korea or like East Asia, the people really, really care. So they don't really see the sun. So I think genetically and behaviorally, we've adapted to be very diligent around skin. Yeah.
Interesting. So sun is bad.
The sun is bad for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. My dermatologist would say the sun is accountable for the majority of the aging.
So I want to talk a little bit about like where your business is at now. I know we said hundreds of millions in revenue. Like where are sales coming from? What has growth been like since you started in terms of like the size of the business, the amount of the employees, like, is there an office? Is there like kind of, where everything is at?
Yeah, so quite a few things to unpack there. Right now, we're kind of in that growing phase. Almost like your hair, we're growing. Going from mid eight figures to beyond is where we are in the stage. We have about 80 people. That includes people from all over the globe, whether it's South America, Philippines, U.S. as well. We run an operations here in California that we fulfill every package. So it's quite a large operations at this point. We have grown traditionally through online channels. Most of the business is e-commerce. So I consider ourselves a online brand first and foremost, although that's changing over the next year. And the primary channels for growth really has been what I would say quite a traditional D2C, direct-to-consumer stack, which is your Facebook ads, your TikToks, your YouTube ads. Amazon is, of course, a big one. Google, right? It's kind of the traditional stuff, but also influencers, right? One of the big things is building trust, as we talked about. So can we get the doctor that I mentioned earlier to endorse us, right? Influencer marketing, especially YouTube, is what we love, is really word of mouth at scale. And so that's been a big driver for us. We have found that having people that you trust talk about you is probably the most effective form of marketing. Of course, and you might have seen like we've even partnered with Brian Johnson as recently as this year on his Don't Die Summit events, and we've seen the lift from that as well. When you have people that are sort of at the top of that health game endorsing your product, it can really go a long way. So how do we leverage that and continue to amplify that, right? And going back to the ABCD framework, it's really how I feel we've grown successfully is let's ensure we get those authentic reviews, or Amazon reviews, you can call them. Make sure that that's amplified and that we're able to maintain a good reputation, because at the end of the day, brand is reputation, and that is the moat, right? Especially in our category. And then before and afters, that's an obvious one. But more than that, right? Can we make sure it's truly authentic? And there's a lot of fake before and afters out there, right? How can we ensure the validity of these? Right, we've created a Facebook group community, for example, where true customers, all real customers, posting the stories, undeniable proof that it works, right? And then the clinical studies, as I mentioned, clinical studies continuing to do that, continuing to show we're empirically and based on numbers, the better product, right? The best product out there for whatever need it is, hair growth, skin, and other concerns.
Take me through kind of like the journey of like, so obviously you started 10 years ago to now 80 employees, hundreds of millions of sales. Like, how does that even like, it's just so hard to picture like year to year. So like when you started, what was the team? Who were the first hires? Like, did you guys raise money?
No, we didn't raise money. When we first started, it was me and a couple virtual assistants from the Philippines, their customer service. So a lot of the job back then was just building out the FAQs, the knowledge base. It's a very high touch product, as you can imagine. A lot of questions.
It's an expensive product, right?
Expensive.
Like what's the price range is like $1,000 to $3,000?
It's anywhere between $500 to $2,000.
Okay,
so it's not cheap.
Yeah.
And so high consideration cycle, and so it's actually that is a limiting factor in some ways, because it's a speed limit, right? There's consideration cycles, so you can't outrun a consideration cycle.
It's very different from selling like a $7, drink or something.
Exactly.
Where you're just trying to get people to love your brand, buy it every day. This is kind of like it's like you're almost selling a car or something. It's like a one-time purchase. And
yeah. There's, I think of products as either like LTV products or AOV products, so like lifetime value, LTV, or average order value, AOV. So at the end of the day, the game is customer acquisition. So it's a relationship of those two numbers to your customer acquisition costs. Your consumables, like the poppies or whatever, like they're very much in the lose money on first sale and gain you as a customer for the next 5 years game. So that's an LTV to CAC game. Whereas we're in like an AOV to CAC game, which means we need to have a bigger first order average order value, and that needs to exceed the acquisition costs, right? But that is inherently a tougher game to play, in my opinion, now that I've gone through this, because every single day you wake up, you have to go acquire a new set of customers. And
Yeah.
you do that over and over again.
Because almost nobody's coming back for us. Well, now you're doing a new product, so then people come back.
Right.
But if it's just like a helmet, right?
Yeah.
Rarely would someone want another helmet.
Yeah, unless it's an upgrade. So I think iPhone 15 to iPhone 16,
Right.
which we've done successfully in terms of launching new
Interesting.
versions of the product.
Yeah.
I can go into that as well. But yes, it's inherently a difficult problem with our business is that there's not a ton of lifetime value because nobody needs two helmets. But I also think that it can be a moat for the business in some ways because once you occupy that real estate on their head, they're not going to a different customer, right? Whereas taking the Poppy example, I could drink Poppy, I could drink Olipop. Maybe I like Olipop more and I leave Poppy,
Yeah.
right? So there's pros and cons.
So when you figured that stuff out, what was kind of the chicken egg thing when you started where you're like, okay, we got to validate this and get a certain amount of sales before I make this hire, or because you said it was just you. What was kind of like the first year in the business, let's say?
Yeah. I kind of omitted one part, which is it was me and my dad really that got into this.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Keep it in the family.
Yeah. And he's kind of more of the product engineering side of things. How do we start? How do we decide, right? Frankly, there wasn't a great process around it. It was sort of as the need arise, we would hire somebody. So the first things we did was we honestly couldn't afford to hire U.S. people, so we had to go to, outsource like Philippines, and it was very common, popularized by Tim Ferriss.
Which is interesting. Now I think it's much more common on Twitter. Everybody's talking about VAs and stuff, but back then it wasn't.
10 years ago. Yeah, so it was much less competitive, and there's, back those like online jobs at PH was what we used. It was a marketplace where you can go hire virtual assistants, and a lot of the initial stuff really was building just operational type of things like CS or just logistics and whatnot. It's not really in a way, you're not creating like true knowledge work as you might think about in terms of like hiring here, for example. So if I were to kind of rethink the process, like how would I build a team? I still think customer service is where you start because you sort of work bottom up in terms of like what is the lowest value, like hourly rate tasks that you're doing. How do you delegate those first and then go up all the way up, right? And finally, at the end, you might end up hiring a CEO 10 years later or something. We're not there yet, but it's sort of like how I would think about it. And then I would think about like what you do as two categories. There's, in terms of all we're doing is generating value. So there's value creation and value protection. Value creation are going to be typically for business like ours, is going to be like product innovation, marketing, growth marketing specifically. And then value protection would be things like operations, logistics, customer service, things that keep the wheels on a car, but not necessarily drive a ton of like value in terms of growth. Obviously, these are valuable employees, valuable roles, but not in the sense of like customer value. And then you want to hold on, I think, for as long as you can, the value driving things while doing a minimal set of value protection type of tasks, and then delegate that way. But very, very soon you're going to hit a speed limit where you're going to have to start delegating value creation. But same thing, you do the bottoms up, like what is the least valuable to most valuable. But then at a certain point, I do think that flips, and you have to start hiring people that are truly like executive level or like strategic thinkers that can take things and way further than you can.
What was the first kind of hire for that executive kind of value creation role that you did, and how many years in was it in the business?
It kind of just, we sort of developed it internally in some ways. Like I couldn't even pinpoint to like an exact time. One of my friends that joined us, he was at a marketing agency, and then he joined us, and he was the director of ops, and eventually kind of became the head of ops. So I would say that's the first one, and that's tremendous help, right? Because as you grow, there's a lot of like HR, ops, recruiting. There's a lot of stuff. So what I was saying with the value protection type of things, he was able to really, first of all, like he enjoyed doing it, which is a big thing because I don't enjoy doing it. My brain doesn't work that way.
And that's like actually overseeing like shipments and factory and like all that.
Less so like shipments and whatnot, but more so just like the general ops. Let's call it non-marketing, non-product side of things, right? So having someone to take that on, really meaningful, like return on my time. So that was the first. And then in more recent years, we brought on head of marketing, head of growth. So that's the other pillar of value creation, where they are now taking the big value creation pillar from me as a lead. And that sort of helps me elevate to even higher level type of things. And now a lot of my time is spent thinking about the product and the value creation pillar of product innovation and R&D and all that. So the phases of the journey was like started with CS ops heavy type of things, move on to like growth marketing heavy, and now it's like really like most of my time focused on either product R&D or like just recruiting.
So the way you think of it is basically like first you're doing everything, and then you go like, okay, like I'm doing these Facebook ads, like let me hire someone who I can tell them to set up the Facebook ad, and then like eventually like you hired your CMO. It's like, okay, now I don't even think about ads at all or marketing. Like you think of that and then tell them, like you're just getting further away from each thing while you step back and kind of oversee it all. Like one of my friends had a good saying. He said, basically I just fire myself every year. So it's like every year, whatever he does, he reviews it and he's like, okay, I hire someone for that role, what I did last year. Next year, what did I do? And then that kind of compounds. I'm kind of fascinated by this like high, like leverage and like hiring stuff because I'm not very good at it. And I've always just kind of like tried to do everything myself. And so like when I see people like you who like have started something, gone to 80 employees and huge company, I'm like fascinated to learn, you know? So,
yeah. And, you know, truth be told, I still haven't quite figured out everything.
I mean, you've done a good job. You're very humble, but
no, it's a lot. And you go through and you learn on the job, really. I mean, I tell people every day I'm running the biggest company I've ever run. Right.
Yeah.
So, it's tough. And I think what has made it easier is all the mistakes that were made around people and whatnot and team building and learning how to spot A players at the end of the day. Because I think one of the biggest costs to a business is having B players. You know, I forgot where I heard it from, but the B players are actually kind of the worst, right? Because they're there and they're not an A player, but they're not a C player either. So you kind of keep them around. And but C players are obvious, so you can identify them. And
the B players aren't breaking shit.
They're not breaking things, but they are an opportunity cost to the A players being that role. And so there's been a couple, and you know, in our company we've gone through a lot of people, of course, in history, and I've seen that pattern of recognizing when that maybe somebody was taking up the spot from someone that could have done maybe a 5x, 10x better job. And one of the things I look for now that I know what to look for is first, like, don't rush into hiring, but second is at a certain scale, you're looking for people that have been there, done that, and they're truly specialized and better than you at that thing. And I've brought on people where I felt like I was better than them at their job, and what that meant was I was always be hovering over their shoulders, looking over everything. It's not empowering. It's not good for them. It's not good for their morale. It's not good for their development. And so that was a big thing I learned from hiring and just people management is at a certain scale, when you can't afford it, you really have to hire the people that have been there, done that, and are better than you, so you can truly let go. And now I still have a hard time with that, truth be told, just because it's my baby and I care so much about every little detail. But that's kind of something you have to learn as you grow and get bigger. Yeah,
that's a good insight.
Yeah.
I've heard people say, like, you know, the expression of like the 10x engineer or like kind of finding these people where you overpay, you know, they might be like way more expensive or like twice as expensive as, you know, let's say a B player or a B plus player, but they're going to deliver like maybe 10 or maybe 50x the value.
Right.
And like every single successful person I've spoken to or heard on podcasts or whatever has the exact same thing that you're saying, where they're like, just pay the premium for the best person because they will deliver so much more value. Whereas if you get like the okay person, they just end up doing an okay job, and it's not 2x, even though it's 2x more expensive, it's like 20x more value. So yeah, it's a good reminder.
Yeah, that's a framework I think about as well in the 10x engineer concept. I will say there's a caveat there that I want to make sure that people think about is it comes down to whether that role has enough leverage to become 10x. So taking a simple example of a warehouse worker, the best warehouse worker is maybe 50% faster than an average warehouse worker. So you don't want to overpay there. That seems obvious, but
Right.
that's an example.
No, that makes
They don't have
sense.
enough leverage in their job. It's not a value creation role as much as, say, like a engineer or growth marketer, right? And then take the other side, the growth marketer then falls more under that, because especially today with AI and whatnot, they can probably 20x the next person. They're good at marketing. They can-
100x maybe.
yeah, they can automate everything, and they can nail that creative that really works. So I think that, yeah, I wanna make sure to think through how much leverage the role has in terms of, how much they can create relative to like what you pay them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of the kind of leverage unlocks that you've had in life and business where you're like, whether it's like getting an EA or getting someone in the company that you're like, that hire just made all the difference? Like,
Yeah, I would say, it's as recent as the past year, we brought on head of marketing, head of growth, and that
are
has
those
been
two separate roles or one?
one role.
One
yeah,
role.
yeah.
Okay.
Head of growth marketing,
Okay.
really. So that has really been a game changer for us and for myself, just because I went from needing to care about Facebook ads performance, tracking marketing KPIs, and waking up thinking about marketing all the time, to I'm not really sure what our ROAS was yesterday or last week for Facebook, because now I'm going one level up, right? I'm looking at the business as a whole. And had we not brought on a head of growth role, I think I would still be spending a lot more of my time in the trenches, like doing tactical type of things. Whereas nowadays, you as a CEO, you really want to have time to think, and being busy is an ROI killer, and I'm still guilty of that. But having the time to poke my head out of the water and like look at the business from a 30,000 foot view, that has been really a big difference. It's allowed me to think about like where does the company need to go? What are the product categories we need to expand into? Like, where are the leverage points in this business? How do we build a moat in a AI forward age, right? And it's led to a couple of insights, like we're doing like a mobile app, for example, to integrate. So it's like thinking beyond just like we're selling helmets online.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what are other things we can do to build that moat, right? And how do we make this defensible, because everything's changing so fast, right? Or how do we drive more efficiency? It's one those things that don't come out of you being busy like in the ad accounts or like looking at the minute type of things, but it can feel like you're producing value in the moment. It certainly felt like it a few years ago when I was even running Facebook ads myself and
Yeah.
like doing it, like, yeah, I'm doing work, but it's like, but at what cost, right? It's at the expense of you doing the 10x work, and spending your time in a way that really drives that high impact.
It's so hard, that stuff, because like it's such a balance of like, as my hair just fell out.
Piece of iRESTORE.
It's such a balance of like, sometimes I need the reminder of like, just do things, like just do the work. And then sometimes I'm like, wait, you gotta like think about it and be very tactical. But then you can get stuck in this like ruminating, like not just doing anything. It's such a hard balance for, I'm sure, a lot of people, but for me, like, does it bleed over to like, let's say your personal life, where it's like, if you go grocery shopping, are you like, wait, this is such a bad use of my time? Or like, do you kind of accounting all the minutes that you're doing stuff? And
No, yes and no. I do track my time diligently. I think, as entrepreneurs, you can't turn it off. So
Yeah.
even if you're grocery shopping, you're probably kind of thinking about work, at least for me.
yeah,
So the way I think of it is just have enough structure where you could do those things guilt-free and not think about it.
yeah,
I'm not in that early stage of like work 80 hours anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit easier now. But there was a time where it felt like everything was a trade-off, including going to the gym, and like, it sounds ridiculous, but like everything felt like a trade-off.
Yeah.
Socializing, going to the gym, but like, we're people. We need to
Yeah.
do things. So I'm not that way anymore. That was like for younger me. But I think the way you can just design your life is just have a cadence where you're allowed to do certain things. For example, my Fridays are more open to do things that are more creative and thinking time. Like I blocked off my calendar, like no meetings whatsoever, so that I'm allowing myself to have the space to do things that are not just like hands-on keyboard type of work, right? And really designing purposeful thinking time is helpful. The way now people may think, well, what's the line between ruminating on random things and like thinking about the business, like that's a very fine line. And so like, how do you differentiate that? Like, when is it waste? When is it productive? And I think the point, the differentiation is you have to sit down with a very important question and be thoughtful around how you're designing your thinking time. So go in with an important prompt, right? For example, for me, it's been, how do we create moat in this business? So like, take an hour and just think about that. Write down your thoughts, not random things that come up. Because if I don't structure my thinking, it's just like random ideas that pop in. I'm just like entrepreneur ADD all day, you know. So write things down and then just reflect on that and then keep iterating on that.
Do you have a good framework of like, so for me, like the thing I try to remind myself is kind of like leave the crumbs to get the bread type of thing, where sometimes, because there's always shit that comes up where small opportunities, or I mean, you know, even stuff as kind of like if you're buying flights, right? Like whatever, you could sit for 2 hours and try and find the best deal on a flight or whatever, which most people do, and they spend all this time on stuff. But if you kind of take a step back, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're like, okay, well, even if I could save $300, but I just spent 3 hours on it, it's like, could I have used that time for something more high ROI? Like, do you kind of have rules or like things for that? I'm always curious with successful people, like think about those things. Or
a really easy framework that is pretty popular is just assign an hourly rate to your time, right? Which I've done mentally.
A very high number, right? Like
Well, it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
But let's say my rate is $1,000 an hour,
Yeah.
right? And then maybe an easy framework is just take your EBITDA divided by hours worked, or a simple framework, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you have 2 million in EBITDA divided by 2,000 hours, and it's 2,000 hours of work in a year.
Yeah.
It's $1,000 hourly rate. And so is this task above or below that, right? That's a really easy way to like quickly filter out ideas.
Yeah.
In practice, sometimes it isn't so easy. You still end up doing
It's so hard. Yeah.
But it's more of like, to me, it's like an 80-20 thing. It's never perfect.
Yeah.
So, but it is important to have a filter and framework to filter things out. Otherwise, you just spend too much time thinking about what to do, right? And the exception to that rule is if you enjoy doing that thing, it doesn't follow that, right? So if you're hanging out with friends, like don't be like, well, what's my hourly rate? Is Jesse worth $1,000 an hour? I'm not sure. I might have to Venmo charge him later.
No, of course.
Yeah.
No, but more like on things that you don't enjoy. Like I think I do a lot of things I don't like doing, but just because it's so hard to just like kind of admit that like you're just going to leave the money on the table,
right?
Because it doesn't feel like, oh, I could be doing something else, but it's a little more indirect where it's like, but you could, you know what I mean? It's not like clocking in and getting paid by the hour, but if you kind of zoom out, you're like, yeah, I could be doing this other work that eventually leads to $1,000 an hour or whatever.
Right.
I find it really hard though, you know?
Yeah. You know, I think it's just, it comes down to your mental model and like your hypothesis about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because all these values are just like, it's completely subjective, right? We're assigning numbers in our heads. It's not like, oh, this work truly is worth this much, you know? I don't have a great framework if you don't have an existing like opportunity, because that to me is like very hypothetical.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to think about that.
That makes it tougher.
Yeah.
You've been you're pretty big on like communities and coaching and like executive coaches and like I guess paying for knowledge and paying for other people's experience, right? Mm-hmm. I'm curious like how you think about that and what's worked really well, because I've noticed this pattern where like a lot of really successful people are really down to pay for that kind of stuff and spend their time doing it to improve. And then it's kind of the less successful people who are like, that's a scam. Courses are a scam. Coaches are a scam. So yeah, I want to hear like what your experience has been like with all that stuff.
Yeah. So paying for knowledge at a certain scale is one of the most impactful things and highest leverage things you can do, in my opinion. You know, you take the simple example of if you want to get more fit, like hiring a fitness coach, especially when you first start, like how impactful is that, right? How much time does that save? And I think it's the same thing with business, but I wouldn't generalize business to be like one thing. There's like different business coaches. There's like digital marketing. There's like general business. There's like even more focused on the psyche and like mental framework. And so anytime you pay for coaching, a good one, you're just accelerating your learning, right? And so if we go back to the same framework of, let's say my time is worth $1,000 an hour and I'm paying a coach $5,000 a month to coach me. Well, if they can help me make one really good decision that leads to, let's say, I don't know, a 6-figure outcome, it would be foolish for me to not pay for that, right? I'm paying $5,000 a month to get $100,000 profit outcome, let's call it. You make that trade every day. It'd be 20x ROAS, right? In that example. So that's the same way to think about things. And the key here is to find someone that, again, really good framework, and don't just like, have they been there, done that, right? Because when someone, it's almost like navigating, like on GPS. Like if someone has taken this road and make a left here, make a right there, do this, do that. That's what a coach is doing for you a lot of times, but in the business world instead of like Google Maps. And they're saying, hey, make a left turn here. When you make a left turn here, it's going to be hard to merge over, or it's going to be there's going to be a bump here. You want to look out for that. Make sure you do this and that, right? It's kind of like what they're doing. Yeah. Sometimes they're not even really telling you anything that you don't know already, but what it is they're helping you think through the problem in a way that's more clear. And then they're going and they're emphasizing, highlighting, underscoring, going, this is it. This is where you focus. And it just gives you so much clarity to go execute that you didn't have, versus like sitting there for 5 hours ruminating. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I go on some random website? Should I talk to ChatGPT? Right? It's like that clarity is worth a lot. And it's sometimes it's not the knowledge, it's the conviction that they give you. Like, I have done this business. This is what worked for me. Focus on this. This is a role you need. This is the KPI that this role needs to focus on. Here's a profile of the person you're looking for. Like, that's so much clarity versus I'm not sure what I'm looking for, what role, what's the title. It's like there's so many things in a business that you just don't know. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And again, I'm running the biggest business I run every single day. So someone that's been there, done that, someone's run $100 million, $500 million business, so much learnings I can just borrow from and save time, right? So to me, it's a no-brainer.
What have there been any like concrete or any like recent examples or anything where you could tell a story that's like where that kind of saved you a huge
yeah. So for example, we're mostly online, and one of the things I did a few years ago was I pestered the crap out of Costco to try to get into Costco, and finally worked 3 years ago. So we were in the .com space, and one thing I just didn't know about being in retailers is that there's a certain pricing structure that they expect. There's a certain margin profile that they expect, and they want to show competitive prices relative to your .com or your Amazon, which creates a problem because now you have different prices on Costco. Maybe it's way cheaper. You get squeezed on margins. People can find it for $200-300 cheaper, and they're like, why am I buying it on your website? So it creates a cannibalization problem, right? Had I had a coach then, and my coach now has been at P&G, he's been in beauty, this is his wheelhouse. He would have coached me and said, hey, when you go into a Costco, when you go into a retailer, you need to think about Costco takes 12% margin, for example. Walmart and Target, they start at 40% gross margin. So when you're designing your product, you need to have that margin, right? The second thing is that you need to think about your channel pricing strategy. You don't just set a price for your product. You have to think about, in this channel, it's this price. In this other channel, it's this price. But that's going to be a conflict. So you then need to create something called SMU, or special. I forgot what it stands for, but special SKU basically for that dedicated channel. Maybe it's different color, maybe it's different whatever, but it's inherently a different product. And so you're not in price competition, as an example. So like who would have thought that? I mean,
very specific knowledge.
I certainly didn't think about that at all. And what happens? Well, we're in Costco. I only have that one product to put in there, so we get squeezed on margin, and that would have saved us 6 figures had I known that and like thoughtfully designed like what the assortment strategy needs to be in different retailers.
Interesting. So you create a little bit of a different SKU that's like, let's say a little bit cheaper, that's only in Costco.
Right.
That's why when you go in Costco, you see like these different pack sizes and stuff of food and stuff.
Exactly. It'll be like a 24-pack instead of a 12-pack of soda, or like you get a bundle of 3 for Tide instead of 1 in Target. It's like, you don't really think about it as a consumer going through the aisles. But once someone tells you, you're like, oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have been some other struggles in the journey in the business that you can remember? Like the things that pop out over your 10-year journey is like, that was a make or break moment, and like some, turned in your favor, or like you saved the day, or
all of them. I'm just kidding. I think very early on, there was very, very early on, it was the first like 6 months or so. We launched on Amazon. We were starting to get some traction, and one of the local distributors in the US reach out to us and say, hey, we want to distribute your product, basically buy wholesale and distribute it. And, so maybe we sell it for them 50% off. They would then sell it for full price and all that. And they were going to order like 120 units, which was like a lot at the time, considering, our product pricing and all that. It was a big deal.
That would be like over 100K of sales.
A little bit less, but yeah, it was a good amount, right?
Yeah.
So
could you say, like, just for reference, like what, or whatever you want to say about the first year, like around what you did, or the first 6 months, or
yeah,
whatever?
we're just over 7 figures in the first year.
First year.
Yeah.
So that was like a big.
Oh, it was a big chunk.
Big
Yeah.
order.
So I obviously you're like, well, you kind of want to say yes, but and this is where coaching comes and mentorship helps a lot. I kind of asked around. I had a cousin who really got me into the space and e-commerce and was a guru in marketing. And he coached me through the process. And he said, listen, this is a short-term gain. To give up control, to like have wholesalers up front means that you lose control over your pricing and your distribution, right? They might go list that on Amazon. You have no control over that process. And it's more important for you to focus on direct to consumer. It's more important for you to focus on having control of the business early on, because then you own that reputation, you own that process, like Amazon reviews, as I mentioned, without giving that up. So we had to turn down, a mid 5-figure probably purchase order to do that. And looking back, that was one of the most important decisions, because had we gone down that path, it probably would have been too nice, and we probably would have sought out more wholesale opportunities, and we would not have gone this direct to consumer, like singular focus on direct consumer route that ultimately led to our success. And what I've seen too, there was a competitor that was launched around the same time, and they did take that other route. They went to Groupon. They did a lot of wholesale. They're no longer around today. And what happened with them was that a lot of their products ended up getting returned, and those return units then ended up on eBay, on Groupon, on the website. And at one point, Groupon, which was selling the product for 40% of the MSRP, was the top ranking thing for their brand search term. So you type in their brand, that was the first thing. So who's going to buy your product at full price if that's the first thing that pops up, right? And so it was so interesting for me looking back like a couple of years to see that, and then that decision, which at the time seemed like it was tough. But that importance of that fork, it was so much more clear looking backwards now that we have the case study of the competitor and us. And now we're sort of like, it's crazy because now we're the top one in the space. But back then, had we made that different decision, I don't think we would be here.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Huge turning point.
I know. And that company's gone. So
I remember, so when I had my cookie company, like I was working with 7-Eleven for a bit, and like I kept dumbing down the product to kind of appease what they were looking for. And, they were like, well, our normal cookies are like smaller and we don't do those flavors. We want like normal flavor. So I kept, and it needs to be like a certain price. Can you use margarine instead of butter? And I kept like agreeing just to try and get that sale so badly. That ended up falling like the whole deal fell through. But my kind of learning on it was like not to sacrifice like what makes you special and what makes your product really good to appease someone else. Because even if it would have worked, it's like the product wouldn't have had staying power because it wasn't that special at that point by dumbing it down to what they wanted,
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I don't know, one kind of a similar thing where it's like just leave the short-term money on the table, stick to what you know is different and good,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what you're describing is taking a very principled approach to how you approach things. This is what my business coach actually taught me is I think as people, when we approach decisions, it's very easy to be emotional. It's very easy to like justify the outcome that you want.
Yeah.
But the way you offset that and try to control that is you have a principle or a framework going in that you have strong conviction around, and you just stick to it. And in this case, it's the conviction is we need to control our reputation to succeed. We need to control our pricing to succeed. And so in order to do that, we can't give that up to a wholesaler. That's an example. So I think that's really important for other entrepreneurs or people making decisions is like, what are the set of principles that I believe are relevant to this decision?
So I think a lot of people hear stories about people building huge companies, or that's always the goal. Like, I want to build a big company. Mm-hmm. What does success look like for you at this point? Like, where is this all going towards? Because at this point, like, I mean, the size of your company, like how big do you see this getting, or what's the end goal for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one I've been thinking about a little bit in my thinking time. I'm very passionate about the business, and I'm passionate about what we do, which is helping people feel better, restore their confidence. It's a really good feeling to help people, especially those around you. Hundreds of my friends and family have our products at this point and can confidently say that it works for them. That is an addicting feeling to have, and I'm almost not wanting to give that up because it's so thrilling to keep chasing that. I'm not sure what the end goal is, to be totally honest. I do want to see this company through and grow it to, maybe it could be the next Therabody, for example. I think that's a brand I look to, or like a Hims, right? Those are companies that in the direct-to-consumer space.
How big are those companies?
Well, Therabody, from what I hear, their peak was about 700 million a year.
Oh, a year.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
It's not bad.
So big.
And Hims is over $1 billion. So
over $1 billion in revenue a year, that would make it like a multiple on that of their value.
yeah, so they're probably. I mean, it's fluctuating so much, but I think they were looking at between 8 and 10 billion last I checked. So depending on when you're checking. So now I don't think our TAM supports that. So I don't think that that's a realistic benchmark for us. But I think a durable good like Therabody is a more reasonable benchmark. Hims is more one that we look to as a category benchmark in terms of how can we think about product expansion? How do we think about the customer? Because at the end of the day, we're solving very similar problems like hair loss and weight loss, for example, and whatnot. So what are some other concerns? But where do I see the company is continuing to grow, crossing different verticals. So we started with hair, then we got into skin. What are other categories that we can go into? And I think about the body as different concerns that we can address with different products. And, starting with hair, we kind of worked our way down to face.
Interesting.
And then are there other concerns that we can address? Not just for anti-aging necessarily, but other, health and wellness type of things. Red light therapy has just so many therapeutic benefits for so many things. So like, what are other things that we can do? And it's not just about red light therapy either. Like, there's other non-invasive tech, right? The core thing for us is, can we do it in a way that has no side effects, that's good for you, that a lot of the call it drug solutions don't offer. So keep doing that and keep expanding globally, as our footprint is very limited to North America today, and intentionally so, just to create that focus. But the next phase, I think, looks a lot more like being global. Obviously, we have a very human nature driven concern in aging and confidence. So where are the other places that make sense for us to expand into? And at least that's going to be the roadmap for the next 3 years or so. So we have an idea of 3 years. I'm not so sure about the long term where this could be, but I think there's one thing I know about the business is that it just changes so fast and evolves so fast that it's hard to foresee that far into the future.
I feel like that insight that you just shared about like going from hair to face down the body is like probably something that you had from taking that step back and having that bird's eye view of everything rather than being in the weeds. Because even though it's a super simple thing, that just made me realize like, oh, like let's say, hair growth has a ceiling of whatever it is, but then like if you start thinking about like the entire body and what you can do, then we're talking like, $10 billion company or something. So that's like an interesting way to look at things.
Yeah, you can think about it as like TAM, right? Total addressable market. It's just like different body parts have different TAMs.
Yeah.
With your face being the highest TAM, right?
Yeah.
So I know it sounds almost like it's like a very businessy way of looking at
most
things.
people never have to think about that because
Right.
Businesses don't get that big. But once you get to
Right.
your size, you're actually probably thinking like, okay, like what % of people that are losing hair are already buying our products? Like there's a limit to it, which is crazy to think. But,
Yeah, they call it terminal growth, right, in finance. So what is a terminal growth? It's a hypothetical number that it's hard to validate, but all businesses inherently have a terminal growth. Most don't hit it, of course. So it's crazy because a year ago I wasn't thinking this much about TAM and different types of things.
Yeah.
So it goes to show like that journey of, you go from a tactical marketer in the weeds to thinking about business categories and TAM and validating that with data and whatnot. Like that's a very different job description from say 2 years ago to now.
Is there a number? Do you know the number of like what the terminal growth would be for?
It's very difficult to identify.
Yeah.
Because we are in a category that's relatively niche, right? If you're defining as hair loss, that's more clear.
Yeah.
If you're defining as red light therapy for hair loss,
Right.
that's less clear. And that's also growing very fast every year.
That's interesting.
So
too.
you have to bake in how fast it's growing as well.
You're like riding this crazy wave right now.
Exactly. Yeah. So in the last year, it's been kind of crazy just because of the amount of interest that's been generated by a lot of influencers and whatnot. It seems like everybody's on the red light therapy train now. But to understand terminal growth, I think you also have to figure out if this train is going to continue to grow at this rate, right? And every industry is going to have a point where it stops growing, like that exponential curve. It has to stop at some point. So it's hard to know, really. But we know that hair loss is a huge industry, of course, and it's a big concern that people have. So I do think there's still a long way to go, but it's a useful exercise to start thinking about, well, if we do hit that limit, what is the next thing for us?
There's always a lot of like confusion, I feel like, around, what does all this mean for you? Or if you start a company, I think like the average person just hears like hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and they're like, Kevin has hundreds of millions of dollars. And like, you know what I mean? How does it translate? Like you could say what you want about it, but do you need to sell the company or go public or something for you to have a huge windfall? Is that like the end goal? Or since you didn't raise money, can you like become profitable and start just like putting money in your pocket? Like, I feel like that whole kind of, world is just like always very opaque. Like it's hard for people to understand.
Yeah. So it depends on the business. For us, it's an inventory heavy business, so we're always reinvesting back into the business. I do not have hundreds of millions of dollars, unfortunately. I wish. Most of the value is tied up in the equity value of the business. That's the truth. In order to have a big windfall, you do need to find liquidity by either selling secondaries or exiting the business or finding some other way, like taking dividends, right? We made a choice to not do that, as most of the money has been put back into the business to keep it going, and investing in growth, investing in inventory. So, but for different types of businesses out there, you could run a business in a way where it cash flows well, right? If you're not growing fast, you could cash flow an e-commerce business, as you don't have to keep buying inventory for the next few months. But if you're growing fast, it just sucks out cash. So this is not the best type of business to pull out personal liquidity.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions between non-entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. People just hear numbers. They see a product everywhere. They just assume like it goes right into the founder's pocket, and it's like so many steps. I mean, that's one of the craziest things, right? You can work on something for 10, 20 years and still be putting everything back in the business. And is that like your goal, to eventually sell, go public, do something like that?
Yeah, we're not sure. I think that a potential exit down the road certainly wouldn't rule out. That makes sense to get personal liquidity. Right now we're just so focused on growing it. It's hard to think that far ahead, because I think that inherently complicates things too. If you bring on investors or I don't know, private equity or whatever, now you kind of have someone you're accountable to and report. Like I can't just be a dictator and make decisions. I have to run it by a board. And I think that complicates things, right? Yeah. It's much easier if I can go into a room and think about something and then make a decision versus having a board meeting. So I don't know if I'll like that, but certainly not ruling that out.
I love the focus. Do you have any advice? I mean, you've learned so much from doing this for 10 years, building this huge company. Like, what are the things that just pop out to you as like the biggest advice you'd give to, people starting businesses?
I think you have to find people that are doing the things you want to do, and people that you really inspire that inspire you, that are 2 steps ahead, and find a way to just hang out around them. The best way for you to learn is just be around people that are already doing the thing, but not people so far ahead of you that you have no idea what they're talking about and you have to look up every acronym or something, right? I think that's key. So as you grow, I think Alex Hormozi talks about this, is you get 2 rungs up the ladder. So if you're at 10 million, maybe you can access a $50 million entrepreneur. If you're 50 million, you can access 100 million. And so at different stages, you get to access a higher level of entrepreneur or group. Doesn't need to be entrepreneur, but person or network, and then keep doing that. And the way that, to start off, you can do that. But the way that you continue to do that is by finding ways to add as much value as you can to those people And it almost sounds manipulative, but it's not, right? There's inherent value in, for example, me hanging out with you and doing this with you, and it's not like I'm scheming some crazy thing. So it's not some manipulative thing, but it's really like, how can I be the most valuable person to people like that? And through osmosis, you just learn so much that you're not going to be able to learn elsewhere. And that's my biggest feedback for anyone, and really for myself too, is it's not like I'm a billionaire, so there's still so many people so far ahead of me that I look up to and want to be around and learn from. So how can I do more of that? How can I deliver value to people around me to help me advance myself further?
Awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Great chat, man. Learned a lot.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then we'll link your site. Is there anything else you want to shout out or like?
Yeah. If you guys want to check us out, we're at iRESTORE.com. So there's a bunch of stuff that I'm sure can help you and people in your life.
I'm sure some people that'll see this are losing hair or need their skin repaired, Yeah.
So. Hey, all of us want our skin to look younger and nicer and healthier. So yeah, go to iRESTORE.com and check us out, and follow me on Twitter as well.
All right, Kevin. Thanks for coming, man.
Thanks, Jesse.
Dope. All right. That was great.
Sweet. Sick.
Yeah, I ain't really got a flex. Been putting work in, so you know what to expect.